All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to 2019. Wow.
Woo!
That's
Happy
hard
New
to
Year.
believe. Yes, Happy New Year. We've got a new neighbor of ours joining us, so I want to welcome everyone to Coffee and Panduce, the 2019 edition. This is actually our first show of the year. We did not have a show last week, but we've got 52 more shows this year, so keep following us. I'm Christian Cano. I want to welcome some of our neighbors that are here, and let's go around the table and we'll welcome everyone to the show.
I'm Jeff Scott, man about town. Candidate in the 9th District, and I'm suffering a little bit of a cold, so bear with me today. Thank you.
I thought that was your new look for the new year or something. And
All
to our
right.
left, Senora.
Hey everybody, buenos dias, happy new year. Feliz año nuevo. Thank you. This is Ruth Perez, a community advocate for the city of Charlotte and also for my whole country. So welcome back, guys.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. This is we actually had email from people saying Fudd doesn't exist because we announced he was going to be on another show and he wasn't able to make it. So, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. Go ahead,
No,
introduce yourself.
Well, as I would say, Scott McKinney is my real name, but
Yeah.
I've had the
was
nickname Fudd for years. And I was telling Jeff earlier, it's kind of like Chance the Rapper. I'm Fudd the musician and a local man about town as well. Jeff and we were discussing various things in the social scene in Charlotte earlier. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and I would like to sincerely thank Christian for giving me this opportunity. I'm looking at this as my springboard to being a token conservative on an MSNBC panel someday. So,
Woohoo!
Well, token, there's a lot of conservatives out there, Fudd. We
Yeah.
just don't happen out.
I think our panel is better though.
Yes.
I'm sticking with this. for
You
now.
won't have that kind of fun here
I'm
like
just
that.
sticking-
So we do have a well-rounded panel. I do want to shout out to two people who could not join us today. A neighbor of mine that lives just a couple of doors down. His name is Chief, and I'm embarrassed. I don't even know Chief's real name. I just call him
Chief
Chief.
is Micah.
Micah. Micah is a neighbor of mine. He's a huge Washington football fan, so we'll hold that against him.
I don't think he has any attire that does not have some sort of Redskins logo on. I've never seen
Exactly.
a guy.
Unfortunately, he's not able to make it today. We were going to have a full table, which we were excited about, and so we hope his mother's doing well, and we hope to see him on the next show. And then, of course, our regular man around town, Mr. Tony Foreman, was not able to make it today. He's got his hands are into so many things here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and he's got some business plans. I'm sure some commissioner. Or
Well, right
some
now he has a
Congress person.
family emergency, so
Oh,
we
I'm
hope
sorry.
that all his family members are doing well and get better soon.
Thank you,
Good
Ruth, for that. Ruth, it's so good to have you. No, but, and nothing against the gentleman. Since we were past the Me Too year,
Yeah, wait. Yeah.
the show has not
I'll
been the
keep
same.
y'all on track.
The
I'll
show
keep you
has
on
not
track.
been the same without you. So, welcome everyone. I want to welcome everyone on our Facebook page, our Coffee and Panduce Facebook page, who are going to watch us today and also later on. As you watch us on the YouTube channel as well, and also on our producers' other sites in
And
Massachusetts.
share our,
Yes, please share.
videos.
And so we're just going to take 5 seconds for you to share us and to like us and stuff. And then, if you have followers you want to share, I know you probably have already. I do that kind of throughout the show, and as does our producer. So once again, welcome, and it's so good to have all of you. Yes, like. So, what we do to start off our show is we do a salute to coffee. Salute.
Coffee.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Ching, ching. Today's Pandusa is American. It is Dunkin' Donuts.
But they are not a sponsor today.
They're not a sponsor today.
No. They're just donuts.
They're just donuts. Wonderful donuts, and of course the coffee that we have. So let's get right into it because today's topic is actually going to be the Trump shutdown, and I apologize for our conservative member. I'm only calling it a Trump shutdown because President Trump called it his shutdown, even though some people are using the Trump shutdown more as it's his fault. We'll talk about there's blame to go around everywhere, but the Trump shutdown, but also how that's impacting the border wall, because that's really my understanding is why there's so much political capital going on right now is because of the border wall. So that is our topic for today. Before we do our topic, anybody have very quickly buttons they want to talk about? No, forgot your button again.
Okay.
I'm naked today.
No, no.
I am buttonless. That is very.
He's got a cap. Please.
I do have a button right here, but I don't know. Want to share with the community?
Please.
Please look up for International Cabinet. We have a lot of goals, and we're trying to bring in our community in unity, especially our immigrants, to come and incorporate and participate in some of the stuff that are going on in the city of Charlotte. We're not talking about political status. It's just, engaging and getting to know each other, our neighbors.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And it looks like that one of our phones we forgot to turn off, so I apologize. I think it's that one. Okay, well, one of them. Welcome everyone, and my button today is Medicare for All. As many of you know, I'm very involved in the Medicare for All movement. Physicians for Healthcare is one of the groups I believe that is pushing this movement. They're having a really big meeting this Thursday to educate current people who are for this, but also to continue to push our cause. And there's going to be a National Day of Education in February, and we'll announce that as well. You can find it on our Facebook page or also follow them as well. Anyone who knows Tara, shout out to Tara. She is one of the persons who got me involved, but so many other people, and it is a movement that is pushed by physicians. One of the reasons Medicare for All is not only good for America, but good for all of us. And because Mr. Foreman, Tony, I have to educate my people, asked me about why this flag looks different than some of the other flags that we wear. This is the ones that we mostly wear. This one, in case you don't realize. This is the Moms Demand Action flag. For those who aren't aware, if you do see someone with the American flag on the lapel that has the orange, that is the Moms Demand Action, which is calls and support for gun reform, which we have talked about, you and I have talked about in the debate in May or April, and it's still a very important issue. So, we've got all that wonderful stuff out of the way. Let's get directly into the topic. The Trump shutdown and border security. We're going to go around and you kind of tell me briefly, if we can keep it to try to 30 seconds, how you feel about that, and so forth, and then we'll go on to the questions that we have. We'll start with you, Mr.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Well, as you know, I stated publicly during the campaign that I was against the wall, and I'm still against the wall, but I do think that this is forcing a lot of people to think about what it means to have a reasonable security system at the border. And so I've certainly never been against the idea that there would be some barrier, right? And I do believe that I'm not thrilled by the shutdown. I'm not thrilled by the theatrics of it. I'm not thrilled by the posturing. I'm not thrilled by the fact that these kind of issues reach this fever pitch, and then all the air gets sucked out of the room for a lot of other very important things. So I don't like the theatrics of it. Having said that, I do believe there's room for improvement when we think about what sort of barrier we do want there, and whether it just involves a better technology, whether it's actually just kind of an engineering problem that we need to resolve, because I'm familiar. I grew up near the border. Yeah, so I'm familiar with the landscape there. So that's, we can talk more about that. But
And I do agree with you.
Yeah.
However, I grew up also on the border in the valley of Texas between Mexico and the United States, and there's always been borders all over our countries. I mean,
yes.
there's borders in South America, Central America, everywhere. I feel that we do deserve a better security. However, a wall is not the best choice. A wall only brings more anger, more war, more discrimination. We need immigration reform. We need a better pattern of facilitate in some of our immigrants that are trying to come to this country thinking that this is going to be a better life. better requirements, something more flexible so they could be able to be helped here in the United States, because that's what we are. USA is known as a helper country. So we do deserve for our people to come the right way. Yes, I'm not gonna say legally, because that's really, really hard. I mean, if a lot of y'all don't know what it takes to come into the country legally, it has to work together with our country and presidents and governments from other countries to come in accord to make it a better and easier way to come.
Okay.
I'm against the wall though.
Okay.
And I'm very, very upset and sad, not for the issue of the wall, for our government closing, because our families are hard workers that are working for the government as well, and they don't deserve not to get paid for what they're doing also.
Okay.
But
As a conservative, and like I say, I lean libertarian, but as a conservative, I am always suspicious of the government. Let me state that before I say anything about the government shutdown. I think it was one of my, and yeah, I'll admit it, Ronald Reagan, hero. I liked Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
I liked Ronald Reagan and a lot of things he did. And he said, you know, the 10 scariest words I think that you could ever hear was, hello, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. And so therefore, as a conservative, I've always had this innate sort of suspicion of big government. So I'll just get that out of the way at the outset. However, having said that, I mean, there are certain functions that the government performs which are, you know, invaluable to all of our lives, obviously. And I really, with the shutdown thing, I really feel empathy for the people who are out of work, who are forced to work in essential positions. Like, I mean, especially you look at the airline industry, the TSA people who are out of work, the air traffic are not out of work, or air traffic controllers. And those two things are not just like, you know, it's not like the mail is slowed down because you don't have as many postmen out delivering. These are inherent national security issues. I mean, with your airlines, with TSA, and so therefore I feel sorry for those people. However, I also think that the whole thing, that the tragedy of the whole thing, and it goes back to the root cause of like the impasse in our government and the inability to have fruitful discussions and to seek out compromise rather than conflict, is the fact that a government shutdown has become a weapon in a political debate.
Sure.
And it's, you know, and look, this is not just Donald Trump. As I recall, in the last administration, there was a government shutdown that was forced by by the other side. But like I say, I think the tragedy is the fact that American citizens of all political parties, of all different viewpoints, are being asked to work without being paid. Now, eventually, they're going to get it back, but that's the tragedy, that the politicization of your job over issues that are beyond anyone's control, other than those people who are in elected office who should be working together to solve the immigration problem, because, and this has been an ongoing thing since 50 years. We've been talking about immigration reform, and every time it comes down to the real nitty gritty and it seems like something's going to work out, the politics come into it, and it just blows up.
Everyone kind of retreats to the corner
Yeah,
and so forth.
yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so glad that we started 2019 with the host keeping the introductions to 30 seconds.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We don't need the little sound card.
Even though I'm a first timer, I can sense that.
Thank you,
I'm very proud of
thank you very much. So, as you can tell, we this is a conversation that I'm sure many families are having and people are having. This is now currently officially, I think as of Saturday, the longest government shutdown we've ever had in the United States of America. And also, so there's a lot of
26 or 36 days.
26, I think it's 25 or 26.
I believe 26 days. And as Fudd shared, there are many individuals that are working that because they're necessary jobs for security or TSA or whatever the case may be, and they're working without pay. and that is obviously hurting morale. It's many people are saying it's hurting security because, you know, I think for an example, I think in Atlanta there was a gun that got through. And then the person was on the plane and said, "Hey, I forgot I had a gun," and so they're saying it got through because of the shutdown. Where TSA
Not
saying,
enough
"Well,
security.
there wasn't." You know, I know those are anecdotal or whatever, but you know, there are obviously going to be concerns, and I agree with Fudd that both parties have used the government shutdown politically. It seems a little different though this time, and the reason to me it seems different, and I think the polling is showing that the American people are seeing it a little different, and I think it may have a lot to do with, and Bud, you and I have had this conversation that we don't always agree. Me probably not don't agree as much as other people on some of the things that Trump says or whatever. It's just how he says it almost shoots himself in the foot. Had he not said, "I don't have a problem shutting the government down, it'll be my shutdown," during that little banter with Pelosi and Schumer, then it wouldn't have given politically
the legs that it has.
to
That
say,
was just to
"This is
open
your
the door.
shutdown."
Yep.
So, you know, I know we're not going to have enough time in this brief time period to talk about the who, what, when, where, how, and
That's what I
whys.
was gonna say. It's so
But,
confusing because apparently one side say that it's the Democrats' fault, but he mentioned it. He opened up that dialogue.
So let's start off just with kind of talking about how you think that President Trump, and I'm saying President, I usually say President 45, President Trump is handling this, so to speak, and then we'll get into the polling. Who wants to start on that?
Well, I just as far as
Sure.
like, and not you know, I agree with much of what Trump has done. Some of the things I disagree with. I mean, I'll be straight up front. I don't think anybody, you know, you can't agree with everything someone does, and Trump especially has been such a polarizing president, and there is no doubt about that. However, you also have to look at the fact that anything that he has tried to accomplish has been scrutinized and in ways undermined in ways that no other president has ever experienced, I don't think. I mean, so let me case in point. Case in point, there's nothing that Trump has done that has not been criticized from some quarter.
Yep.
And as to go back and use another Ronald Reagan quote, Ronald Reagan once said, you know, if I went out tomorrow and walked on water, the headline in the Washington Post the next day would be, "Reagan can't swim."
Sure.
And so basically, it's no matter, with some people, no matter what Trump does, even if deep down they say, well, this is good, they would never say it in a public forum because the visceral hatred of the man, the visceral hatred of the guy is just so strong from the, I read a survey, and this is not from, this is from an independent, I don't know if it was the Pew organization, but an independent polling organization said that the major media outlets in 2018, the coverage of Trump was 90% negative.
Sure.
And I think that's probably unprecedented in American history that anybody has had that kind of media, basically backlash. My point in all that being is that I think that Trump feels, and this is just because nobody, God knows, nobody knows what that guy's thinking, or I don't think they do. If they do, you can email me at moonshinefud.com and hotmail. My basic point being is that I think he feels so backed into a wall that this government shutdown is the only way he has of ever having any chance of getting the border wall, which he is so obviously politically invested in, because that was one of the main points of this campaign.
But don't you think this is something personal on him?
Well, I think yeah, and like I say, I think that he is so invested in the wall, and he's getting backlash from the hardcore right-wing people. You know, Ann Coulter is saying, God bless Ann Coulter, but she's saying that, Trump's not going to do the wall, he's going to cave, he's going to give in, and so I think he feels pressure, and he feels pressure from his base and from
He wants to prove them wrong.
Because, he wants to prove to his constituents that he is going to follow through on his campaign promise. One of his biggest was which build the wall, and I think regardless of what we might argue about the morality or the actual practical aspect of a border wall, that it is something that the majority of people who voted for Trump were in favor of, because they feel threatened from the influx of just this, basically what Trump said. You know, they fear terrorists, they fear the drug gangs, they fear the cartels, and they fear, and he that resonated with people.
Sure.
And I think that was one of the main reasons that he got elected. And like I say, now I think he feels that as far as his political capital is concerned, the only thing he can do that he could possibly get this done
Sure.
is the shutdown, because that's going to force people into a corner one way or the other.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on how they feel Trump is handling this?
Well, I hate to weigh in on this when I have so little reverence for the office of the presidency. You know, I don't think of myself as someone who has Trump derangement syndrome. You know, I'm not a fan of his, but I don't get all wigged out about
Sure.
him either. And I remember, I think this happened during when he was first elected. I happened to be, I guess I was in Atlanta, and I was at one of the hotels, and of course, and even in the elevators, they had the little CNN. They had little TVs with CNN on. Every time I got into the elevator, it was like Trump on CNN. You know, just the nonstop coverage. So I'm a little burned out by it.
That goes to your
saturated.
conversation about that. It's always on. He's always on.
But
Yeah,
Media.
he's always on. So I just feel like as an issues-oriented candidate,
Sure.
I want to find the good things,
Mhm.
and you know there have been some good things,
Oh, yeah.
especially recently. We talked about this in the last cast
Yep.
about Syria. We don't know how that's going to go, but we like the direction. Same way with
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
he's
Same
done
way
good.
with
Mhm.
news recently about a potential back channel to negotiations with Iran, which would be great. So there are some really good things aside from the fact that people like John Bolton are still present, actual hawks who would like to bomb a lot of countries. So I look at that and I say, well, that's what I agree with. I feel very good about that. When it gets to the wall and when it gets to immigration, you know, I don't like his fear mongering. No, I don't like that.
'Cause that's his personal
Yeah.
issue that he
And
had bad experience.
Having said that, you know, you could say, like, you know, what Scott Adams says, who's a popular Periscope podcaster. He's just saying that you know, Trump is a very, very persuasive human being. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time, and he cuts deals. He goes out directionally the way people want, and then he sort of pulls back, and so he's a very shrewd
Business
negotiator. Now,
entrepreneur.
I don't really know whether that's true or not, but I think that's a reasonable theory about
Yeah.
what it is that he does and why he's so persuasive with people and why people have an attachment to him. I don't feel the same way, but I understand that he does have that effect on people. So I'm trying to be, like I said, an issues-oriented candidate. And I want to be able to pick and choose without being subject to the fear-mongering and without being a subject
Correct.
to the attachments and stuff. So.
You know, my I question myself every single night about the border wall.
Mhm.
Listening to that, what is he gonna do after, if he gets the wall?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen next? What makes him think that immigration will cut down? There's other borders. There's the Canada border.
Yeah.
Did you know that the majority of Mexican people have better access to travel to Canada
Mm.
and then just introduce themselves into the United States?
Yeah.
What is he gonna do? He's gonna create another wall on the other side of the border
Yeah.
of Canada as well? I
Yeah,
mean,
we're not.
what's gonna happen?
We're not going to build an impermeable
you know what I'm saying?
barrier.
Yeah.
But the fact that the country would, you know, by its nature, want to have some protections
Sure.
to deal with people who
And
might.
I understand perfectly on that. The only issue is that men's mentality as a human being, not on referring on men, male.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Yes,
because I think,
men's
why is she
mentality.
only talking about
no,
men?
I'm clarifying, you know, like men's
Gotta watch it with
mentality as
this
a
guy.
human being.
Yeah.
It has to start
You
off
feminists.
by bringing education, because his biggest fear is about the gun related, the gang issues,
Yeah.
the cartels. Cartels always existed.
Yeah.
Back in the days,
Right.
and before our ancestors, every single
Well, they
cartel.
existed here in this country. It
They
was called La
existed in
Cosa Nostra,
Chicago.
or the Syndicate.
In Chicago, and you know, there's got to be a better education so we can be able to change that.
Right.
Believe me, gangs are everywhere, and the worst part of it is that we have kids here in the United States
Yeah.
that are doing bad things as well.
Yeah.
What are we planning to do?
We still have gangsters. They're called the RNC and the DNC.
And we have the Reds.
I'll agree. I'll agree with that.
All right, I got-
The Reds and the Blues.
So
we better take a coffee break here.
So if I start to say, if any of us ever run for office again, we're getting
I'll be
no
running
funding.
in red
We'll
or
be
blue.
getting no funding from anyone.
In full disclosure, my imposition with the North Carolina Democratic Party for being kicked out is under
Under review.
Under investigation.
under appeal. So,
Okay.
Or as they say at the
Blah,
Oscars,
blah.
for your consideration.
For your consideration.
For your consideration question.
Oh,
But to
okay.
make a
Please.
point on to what Ruth was saying, and I think the saddest part of this whole thing is that I truly believe that I don't think it will be a very, very small minority of American citizens who are not very concerned about immigration reform because this affects all of our lives in a very direct way. The United States is known as a nation of immigrants, which it is. I mean, we're a melting pot. We're the most wonderful experiment ever, and and that's why this experiment was so great, was because we were able to sit down and have discussions. It's not just the art of the deal, as Trump says. What we've lost is the art of compromise.
Yes.
Because in this country today, with all the divisions, everybody is so backed into their corners that they can't come out and even admit in the least to being wrong or perhaps seeing different points of view. And with the wall, I think the wall, in a way, when Trump first came out with his rhetoric about the wall and his campaign promises and all that stuff about the wall, I think that he himself, and like I say, God forbid that I get inside Donald Trump's head, but I think it was really, at first, he meant it more in a rhetorical or a metaphorical sense, that
Sure.
like we need some barrier to stop the vast number of illegal immigrants coming in, because from a fiscal point of view, we just cannot support that many people. And you'll find, I think, and I would hope Ruth would agree, I would think Ruth would agree, that even those in the legal immigrant community, they're not thrilled about a ton of illegal people coming into the country through the back door, through the illegal way. But there has to be some solution, and hopefully this will drive the debate to get the people out of their corners, because the wall, and even though I support a physical barrier of some sort, the wall is not going to solve the crisis that we have in the immigration system today. The only way that's going to be solved is through negotiation, through people sitting down, having level-headed conversations about immigration reform. And like I say, this debate has been going on for 40, 50,
And you know
Since-
what the
since
worst
Reagan.
part
Since
of it
Reagan,
is?
exactly,
You know what what he's causing and provoking? You just said it. The bad people, when he said, I need something to block all this, gang members and all these killers and murders, what is he doing? He's making
pushing
them.
buttons. He's pushing
get-
buttons.
Now we're having
Yeah.
another caravan.
With
Over
it.
1,000 people. They just came out yesterday.
from Honduras.
And let me tell you, now they're gonna prove them that, okay, you're calling us that we're murders, that we're this, that we're that. Let me show y'all, and they're gonna start.
So if I
coming.
understand this correctly, what you're saying, Fudd, is, that conservatives are, you're speaking, you represent all conservatives in America today, by the way. Are generally concerned about security, about when President 45 said, they're bringing murderers, they're bringing rapists and stuff. It resonated with many people who support him because they have that fear. Is
They
that what
wanna
you're saying?
have
I think-
and what
well-
you're saying is that that
That
type
open
of
up.
language almost feeds, makes people.
And
Oh, yeah.
people
Oh,
say,
yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I do agree with you. Even though I've come from immigrant parents, we don't agree with violence. We do not agree,
Oh,
and we
certainly.
do not pamper no gang members and drugs and all that. But we are concerned that that is going on everywhere, not only on immigrants.
Sure.
Well, and I'm not saying, and you know, and I'm not saying, and I do think that Trump has a tendency to appeal to the evil angels of people's nature sometime in the sense that the rhetoric now certainly, I mean, there's a percentage of the population out there who does view this in
Sure.
racial terms and discriminatory terms. You know, they're like, keep those brown people out of here. You know, but I
The
don't think-
Mexicans.
but I think, but you know, but also I think that that is a very small minority. I mean, we're going to have.
But it seems like that is who Trump is when he talks about, you know, his base, and none of us are a fly on the wall in the Trump office. But what people are saying is that the reason he is standing his ground so firmly on this is because, like you said. I don't know if I can say it this way. He's trying to save face with his base, and that base is really such a small group. So why would you, if you're president of the United States of America, so concerned about a very small percentage of people and just alienate the rest of the individuals? I think that's probably why some people who maybe you would consider to be a little bit more reasonable about negotiations, they start to think, well,
this guy's just pushing to the hate mongers.
Yes.
He's pushing this.
They
he's,
don't
he's
see
presenting
a
this.
light, yeah.
Yeah, and they. And,
That's what I'm
whereas,
curious, yeah.
whereas I think that's the problem with Trump.
Sure.
Is he alienates so many people
Sure.
just by his very existence. I mean, regardless of what he does or says, there are just people who hate him. So therefore, they're going to assume the worst. Like, oh, he wants the wall because he's a racist. He wants to keep people of color or people of impoverished people out of the country, and I don't think that's. I don't really think that's true. And I think that, like I say, I think the majority of the people who do support the wall and who were all in for Trump because they supported the wall, I don't think those people are necessarily racist. I think those people are. They have, in their minds, they have legitimate fears, both
Yeah.
economically, socially. Criminally, that this is an existential threat to us.
And that's what, and what you said is very important for us to hear, because many of us are in our bubbles, in our families and politically and so forth. Very
Never more so than
Yeah,
we are right
yes.
now. I mean, we're more
and
polarized
very
than
few of us take the opportunity, and that goes with whether Republican, Libertarian,
Democrat.
Green, Democrat, whatever, unaffiliated. We tend to surround ourselves on social media and also in what we do socially, whatever, with people who are like-minded individuals. So we don't often hear some of the other things. I'm very fortunate, and some of us are very fortunate, where we are able to hear other conversation. Now, I've heard what you said coming from what I would not consider to be, and I don't consider you to be, but I would not consider to be the pardon the way I say this, the Trump, there's this image of the Trump supporter, which the polling says is usually a white, non-college educated individual, male individual, white, and that is the polling tends to be that's how they measure whether he's doing well or not, and then the white educated, they say, well, he's lost them, but they've gone to the middle or whatever. And the people that I've
Let
heard
me
what
tell
you
you,
said
we have
aren't
a
from
lot.
them.
Yeah,
They
we have
are
a lot
from
of Latinos.
very educated. They're from Latinos.
Yes.
They're from individuals, and they may not say it as openly to the other individuals, the people, but they are saying what you say behind, which is one of the reasons we have some of the elections that we have, because they're thinking that, and it's important for us to hear that. I guess what I am saying, and I know you and I have had this conversation about the border wall as well, is if the goal is I think we had this the other day, if the true goal is about American and border security, and if you really truly want to pass this, even though I don't think we need it, but if that's really what you want to do, and if you're going to put, draw a line in the sand, then be fair about your messaging. Because as long as you continue to message that it's a southern border wall, southern border wall, southern border wall, you're going to have people, even if it's true or not, come to the conclusion that you are against a people of color because it's a southern border wall.
Certainly.
If you were truly concerned about border security, and if you want the message to be about American border security, then you would say, I'm concerned about securing all of America, which means the southern border, the northern border, the east
Thank
coast, and
you.
the west coast.
Exactly.
If Trump did that, he would get people who would say, because I'm concerned about security, border security, we're all concerned about that. Now, do I want it to stop people from coming over? We do that already. So that's what I'm talking about. Maybe
I would much rather keep those pesky Canadians out of here than the Mexicans, because I know some of those Canadians, and oh my God.
Well,
no, but not to belittle your point.
I
but
understand.
I think that is a more inclusive approach, and saying we're going to look at this from all different angles.
because then if you did it that way, if the message from President Trump was, I'm concerned about securing America, border security. Or some of the politicians like to say, you can't be a country without boundaries or borders or what is that? That slogan. Then if we agree to that, and if we say, okay, we'll give that to you, and then you talk about securing all of America, then the conversation about building a wall has less impact on fiscal conservatives, because instead of, even though he's asking for $5 billion, it's really cost about $20 billion to build that wall. So you're looking from $20 billion to about $100 billion. Then people will start to say, well, let's not really talk about a wall. Let's just talk about security in general. And then we wouldn't have this barrier. What do you think, Mr. Libertarian?
Well, yeah, I mean, just the.
So I can eat my donut.
I knew you were trying to sneak something.
Exactly. I'm like,
Well, in a sense, and this is what I picked up from listening to some of Scott Adams, the cartoonist who wrote Dilbert, who writes Dilbert. So some of his deliberations on this topic. He thinks, we're all moving to this position where we're really talking about it as an engineering problem at this point. We're saying, how can we build something that serves the purpose? Well, the purpose, we don't exactly know what the purpose is because the Congress and the President haven't quite agreed on it. If the purpose is to stop brown people from coming over, that's not a very intelligent thing to do.
Sure.
So we still have to have all these other reforms like processing people, making sure that the immigrant courts work effectively, making sure that detention centers aren't hellholes for people. So there's still a lot of other little things to do besides, the engineering of the barrier, which prevents people from crawling over, being harmed, or thinking that they can get through, and then working around that. And you can work around that with some kind of surveillance on board with drones.
You gotta keep in mind, he's not a type of person that will sit and talk and have those kind of
that's fine. Yeah, I just want to return to my earlier point that I'm not obsessed about his.
Like you mentioned earlier, he's a businessman, so he's used to just building things.
But I think,
let's
say what you got to say, then I'm going to just jump in.
Finish your
Well, and I think it may be an oversimplification to say, all in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
Sure.
We have to have the.
I think
It's come to the point that I think that Trump basically has said the only way in his mind that he thinks he can get any kind of immigration reform is by using that physical barrier, that threat of that wall, and then maybe people will come to the table, and then we'll discuss the humane side of immigration.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was a great way of saying it. This is not this show, but I do want to table this to later because we have 52 shows this year.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll be able to get to it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much more proof, and this is just me, how much more proof we have to give the Trump President 45's base, or his loyal supporters, that he is not a great businessman. It seems like everything is based upon he is a good, smart, intelligent businessman, so he must know what he's doing.
No.
I don't think he is a good
He's
businessman.
the number one.
I don't think he was a good
bankruptcy.
businessman when he was running
In Atlantic
Trump.
City.
Yeah, in
when
Atlantic
he
City.
ran
Yeah.
I
into
think he
bankruptcy.
was just a rich kid who knew how to work the system from bankruptcies and whatever and so forth. And I don't think that there are that many people who are in the hotel business or the real estate business that would consider Donald Trump as a Trammell Crow in Dallas or someone here in the Mecklenburg Charlotte area or whatever. And so when I hear people say, well, he's a good negotiator, he's obviously not a good negotiator because we have a shutdown. If you were a good negotiator, we wouldn't have had a shutdown. So I'm curious, and I know that's another show, because what has to happen where people who support President Trump as a businessman come to the conclusion he's really not a very good businessman. I don't think he knows what he's doing. He just is like a fly-by-night kind of individual. He's just not used to people telling him no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that's another show, but
Right.
the reason I say that is because you had mentioned, that he's kind of giving and taking. I don't think President Trump has any strategic idea of what he's doing. I think he wakes up on a daily basis and just kind of flies by night.
Well, this is what we're going to do today. I think he thinks in generalities
Sure.
rather than
Yeah.
specifics.
Sure.
And I think throughout his and to your point, he's always been a child of privilege. I mean, even though he is you can agree, I think, that he's a self-made man and he's made mistakes, but he has
Well, when
made
you start off
business
with that
deals.
amount of money, you.
Well, certainly. I mean,
If you start off with zero and you end up with zero or with one, are you also a self-made
Yeah.
person?
well, I started
just
out
wondered.
with hillbilly capital, and
So
look
you're
at-
right.
look
So
at-
we're
look
all
at
self-made.
my
I
position
agree.
in the charts today. I mean,
That's
no.
right. That's right.
But yeah,
Sorry.
I can see that. I concede that point somewhat, but I do think that he has. You can't argue that he's been successful in
Yes.
many of his ventures. I mean, look.
So
no
are the
further-
Kardashians.
Well, sure. Yeah.
So there is success
Well,
that is made, I think, through hard work, and there's success that is
Multiple.
made
There's
through.
and that's good. Your point is it's clear, but let me tell you, who helped him succeed in those businesses that he had?
Daddy.
Not only Daddy, but thanks to all the immigrant hands that he hired
Certainly.
to make them
Yeah.
grow.
And you see, I also think there's this assumption that Donald Trump is. I don't think he's a racist. I don't think he thinks in terms of race. I just do not see, because he's always associated with minority
This is where I wish
communities.
we had Tony Foreman here, because I would go ahead. I don't know if
It's
you want to
not-
add anything.
He
We're getting a little
might
bit off
not
topic.
know.
Yeah.
he might not know the meaning of being racist.
That's kind of what I was going to.
That's
Yeah.
I don't. I
You know
will
what I'm
agree
saying?
with you, Fun.
Yeah.
There are many people
that don't know.
that I don't think they consider themselves racist. But I do think, because they don't understand what they're doing is racism.
Thank you.
And they may not be racist, but they're bigots, and they may not know the difference between, because we all have bigotry in one way or
Correct.
another.
Certainly, yeah,
Yes.
we're all
And whether-
prejudiced in our own
Yes,
certain ways.
and I do think that there are many people who say, "Well, I'm not a racist," and I don't think they honestly
But they
don't think that
they
they're
really
racist.
don't think they are. But
Yeah.
the comments and the way they think, their mentality
Is racism.
Thank
And if
you.
you're on the other end, it is hard to tell someone, "I'm not talking bad about you," when they're feeling that.
Well, and
Does that make
also,
sense? I don't know
yeah,
if
that totally makes
sense.
sense, and I
Yeah.
think to that point, there is and there's no excuse for, you can say, well,
Sure.
it's all in your raising,
Sure.
but the way a lot of people were brought up, they are brought up in these situations where they don't consider some sort of what
And
we would
that's-
consider
and that's-
abhorrent behavior.
and
They don't
that's what
consider
we're trying to change.
Yeah, and that's what should be changed. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's just like my parents,
Yeah.
who I love dearly, and I think they are the kindest and most Christian, good people that I know.
Sure.
But still, yet, because they are of their generation and they grew up in a certain
Sure.
environment and in a certain place, there are things that they do that they don't realize
Yeah.
that might be offensive.
Well, my dad does. Yeah, I agree.
but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, but the younger generation coming along, I think you have to have, there's some give and take in
Sure.
that, because it goes from, on the one hand, like people not realizing that they're maybe being offensive or racist, to the other hand, where everyone's so politically correct that it stifles any sort of conversation about any sort of issue.
And that's another show, being politically
Yeah.
What
correct.
do you think, Steve? I mean, Jeff?
Jeff? I know we kind of went off a little bit, but
I
I got to
know.
give you a fair chance because we're running low,
In the-
late, so we got to jump to the next.
In the immortal words
next
of,
segment.
from the musical Avenue Q, everybody's a little bit racist.
Yes.
You're so cultured. Did we say that the last time you were here? But you went to a show last week that's completely off the subject.
Yeah.
What was it?
I went to a couple of shows last week. I saw
Yeah, he's
a
really
Doors,
into like
a
theater
Doors,
and
a Doors tribute band, which was great.
I've
Oh.
heard from you're
And they
not
were
the first
great.
person I've
They were
heard.
excellent.
say that.
I saw a Prokofiev Cinderella, Matthew Burns' production of Cinderella, which
Okay.
takes place during World War II.
You gotta
in
invite us.
Yeah, all of our
Uh,
viewers are tuning out
yeah.
at this moment.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Well,
just
so
curious.
Not the more cultural ones.
Uh-huh.
Matthew Byrne is one of the world's greatest choreographers. So if you ever get an opportunity to see, and Chispita understands this
Oh, well, she's cool.
about choreography. He was great. I got
Okay.
to sit in on a session and listen to him
Oh,
talk
wow.
about the different productions.
Wow.
And I think I saw some other show, some piano bar show.
Oh, excellent. Well,
Anyway, that's-
thank you for absorbing.
That was our cultural
Thank you for
corner.
absorbing-
That's exactly what
Culture
I was
Thank
saying.
you, thank you for
Yeah.
absorbing our cultural that many of us don't have an opportunity. Well, we do. We just would rather watch Netflix, I guess.
Netflix is going
Uh,
up, you know
yeah.
that,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
cost of Netflix is
Yes.
that's going to go to our next segment, which is what's happening.
Mhm.
First of all, this is a really important conversation. Trump, border wall, in the polling. I had it in front of me, and we're having some technical problems, and it failed. But according to the polling, obviously, I think it's 8 in 10 Democrats believe that we do not have a crisis at the border. 7 in 10 Republicans believe that we do have a crisis at the border, but only 46% of them, I believe that we need a border wall. So, and then within that 46%, what they would consider demographically the Trump base, which what they label as the white, not college educated male,
undereducated male.
that dropped 5 points since the shutdown. So it seems like even polling wise, the Trump base is starting to say that that's not
The solution.
The solution to it. So I'm hoping. I don't know that polling number is going to impact politically because everyone spins polling numbers
Yeah.
however they want to spin them, and they'll say, oh, that's a certain poll. But I do think that the testimonials that we're watching were the individuals. For an example, today the Coast Guard. I think it was. I forgot how many of them were not paid. I don't know, it was 40,000 or so,
Wow.
but it was quite a few. And because they're part of the military, Coast Guard is part of our
Yeah.
military branch, they can't say anything, but their spouses were saying things and how they're trying to loan each other money. And it's so, I don't, it is almost, it's embarrassing, but it's also sad that we have people that are protecting our country and
Going
that
through
are
that.
in a situation where they're having to worry about payday loans, which we know are the biggest ripoff
Yeah.
certainly.
and so forth. And that is a situation that I think that I hope that we can bring. I don't know how we're going to solve this because it just seems like everyone is. What I'm hoping happens is Trump, because the numbers seem to be not going shifting
him.
with him, and they don't seem to be shifting on the other end. Those we have to use Democrats on that. That someone in his circle will say, let's bite the bullet. Whatever excuse you want to give, let's come to the. I think this.
It's your shutdown. You claim the shutdown, so you can also end it and claim
Yes.
that too.
And we talked about. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I think we have that. Americans have not long-term memories. We're not the European countries where we remember things generations and centuries. We forget about what happens like a year ago. And if President Trump actually could sit down and take the high road, which he's never done, but I always have like a half glass full type of person.
Oh, Lord.
No, if he would actually say,
Let me check.
let's come together. we need to reach this another way or whatever, he would score a lot of political points, and there's also legislation that he could probably pass immediately
He has
after
too
that
much
he's
ego
concerned
on
about.
himself.
But there's a time, I think, where every individual comes to the realization that it's time to compromise, and it hurts your ego or your pride,
Mhm.
but I'm hoping that that happens, because I don't know what the option is. I mean, does anybody know legally what the option is other
There's
than...
no option.
Well, and I'm kind of sketchy on this
Yeah.
national emergency thing. I think that would be a bad idea. I think the more you weaponize, and it's truly weapon, the more you
Sure.
weaponize government,
Sure.
the more you're going to hurt individuals. You're going to have collateral damage, as
Oh,
they say
yeah.
in the military, and that's exactly what these government workers are. They're collateral damage
Yeah.
over a political fight
Mhm.
that maybe Trump's wrong about some of it. Maybe he's right about some of it. Maybe Pelosi and Schumer are wrong about some of it. Maybe they're right about some of it. But until they can actually get together
Yeah.
and hash this out, there's no reason to take people, innocent people, hostage.
Which is what's
to,
happening now.
which is
Sure.
what's happening
Yeah.
now to avert. And like I keep going back to this, a conversation that we've been having
Yeah.
for all my heck since I was a kid, and there has to be compromise enough that we can have a workable border security, a humane and fair system of immigration, but yet we do have to maintain, and this is where I fall back on my conservatism, we have to maintain our border. Because, and it's not a cliche,
Sure.
without a border, you are not a country.
Yeah.
But we
Without
have
without a
When we
country
have a border, we just need to have it secure in a
Secure
proper way.
in a proper way, and a system that those who want to come here can do so in a fair,
In a fair
way,
way, yep.
and be treated fairly, yet be fair to the people who are already here.
So,
Yeah.
Fudd, would it be fair to say, if we all agree, and I'm going to ask you this, if we all agree that the goal is to make sure that we have a secure border, because we all are concerned about security, whether it's our house, you've seen the amount of cameras in this house and facing
Sure.
outside,
Sure.
and that who do we ask? If the goal is to secure our borders, let's just assume it's all the borders, not just the southern border, but all the borders. Then the people we should be asking is the people who live in those borders. So if our goal is to secure, let's start off with the southern border,
Okay.
or even in the northern border, then we should be asking the elected officials and the
No, they're-
people that live along the southern border to say, what do you want, instead of us telling them what they want.
Certainly, well, that's the function of government. The function of government
Yes.
is to work for the people.
So we
should be
asking-
we don't work for the government. Well, actually, that's a bad
Yeah.
analogy to use
Yes.
right now. Some of us do work for the government and are
Yeah.
not getting paid.
Yeah.
But the old saying that we elect the government to work for us.
us.
We are not working for the government. And you're absolutely correct. If we brought those people in, and I don't think it's just a matter of citizens who live
Sure.
along those borders, but also the people who know border security
Sure,
best,
yeah.
the border patrol,
Yeah.
ICE.
The
And I mean, I
sheriffs,
know
yeah.
ICE is the whipping boy for the left. The left, on the whole, hates immigration and customs enforcement. But without those guys, we are in a heap of trouble.
Well, you know,
But
I
we were
just
without-
came
yeah.
up a few years back. We have to make sure that Homeland Security does their job.
Oh, certainly.
ICE came out of Homeland
Yeah, because
Security.
ICE is a fairly new,
Yeah, that's
relatively
new.
new. Yeah.
new organization, and
Well,
the
there
reason
was enforcement under the
Yes.
Department
Yeah.
of Justice.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it was just Homeland Security,
Okay,
law
well,
enforcement
well,
for
But
justice.
they
We're running
took over
long,
this one.
Yeah.
so we're going to go into our next segment. But I just want to say that I agree with you, Fudd. I agree with you. I agree with everyone.
Thank you.
You're such an agreeable
Yeah.
sort of
You're
person.
so agreeable.
But I do want to say that this is obviously a conversation that people should continue to have with their circle of friends. Please have it respectfully with each other, and also take into consideration that there are many people out there who are working on our behalf as government workers, working to make this country go round, that are not being paid. And I do hope that we can somehow come to some conclusion and get them back to work, and then start actually, Congress doing the job of
That they're elected
and
to
the
do.
President doing the job, and the Senate doing the job. And
Yeah.
I understand why so many people want to run for office, not including me. They don't, I don't even know if they work.
Yeah.
I mean, they work. They
imagine.
work like 200 days a year, and they're
only get paid
they're
for
all-
one.
They get
Party
and they
in
get-
Puerto Rico and go see Hamilton and all that kind of fun
Exactly.
stuff.
Well,
I had to
Just
get that in
imagine,
there.
look, I gotta get this out.
Sure.
Just imagine how
we're gonna go a little long.
how our people right now. We had, I think there were 3 murders yesterday in Afghanistan or in the war.
Yeah, that's right.
It's very
three military.
Yes, imagine
American
how
military
they feel
individuals.
frustrated of what's going on here with their families here, not getting paid, and they still gotta go out there and do their job
Defend, yeah.
and defend our
the
country.
Yeah.
Well,
You know-
I would quibble with that.
Right, go ahead.
I don't think
Do it.
we're defending our country by being in Afghanistan.
I don't
but
think so
that's-
either,
But
yeah.
that's a separate question.
Yeah, and we did talk about briefly
Yeah.
about that about
Yeah.
and
I do
and-
agree with you on
Yeah.
that
And,
one.
and,
Okay.
and what we had said one of our last shows is airings is that as a Democrat,
picking
many
up on-
times we've tried to adopt some of the things that Republicans have been doing over the last 20 years and how they've been successful. And one of the reasons that they have been successful is because they continue to pander to the base, pander to the base, pander to the base.
Mhm.
And so we have tried to adopt some of their strategies by pandering to our base, but we've also given up some of our moral high ground, which means that we stop rewarding our opposition when they do good things. And we tried to do that last time with
That's
saying,
right.
we do appreciate the fact that the president has moved forward with medical cannabis, moved forward getting out of Syria, moved forward a criminal
Prison
justice,
reform.
prison reform.
That's right. That's right.
That
all,
he has
all very
fixed.
good.
I don't think he fixed NAFTA, but he
Yeah.
gave the impression he fixed NAFTA.
Yeah.
He is talking
Mhm.
about treaties that are unfair to unions and so forth. So there are many things that he's good at,
Positive.
and we don't do enough as Democrats and as saying we got to give him credit, even though I'm not sure that he actually does it himself.
Yeah.
It's under his watch.
That's
We've
right.
got to give him credit, and I think that as you said, as neighbors,
Mhm.
we need to do more of that rather than knocking it. But
Yeah.
the reality is, and this is what's really hard, Fudd, and this is one of the things that I have a understanding with. It's really hard when you've gone through, I feel like I would say since Reagan. Because I actually liked Reagan, believe it or
Yeah.
not. I didn't vote for him, but I
Yeah,
liked Reagan.
yeah.
There you go again.
Exactly. But he did give us immigration reform, and that is the reason
He started it.
That
He
is the
started
reason
this on
my
the path.
paternal grandfather became a
Was
citizen.
half.
American citizen.
My paternal grandmother lived in Texas before Texas was Texas, so she's actually always been American, so to speak. On my maternal side, both my grandparents, I'm fourth, fifth generation American, but my paternal grandfather was able to become a naturalized citizen because of Reagan's action
yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah.
So I understand that was neat, and we haven't really had any since then. So it seems like for the last 20 years, if you are a progressive or a Democrat, you've had Republican politicians just beaten to their base, and then once Democrats decide we got to do that if we want to start winning elections, and then the Republicans to say, oh, now we want to be, now we want to compromise. Now we want to, and it's hard when you've been beaten for so long for someone just to say, oh, hands up.
Yeah, we'll
Let's get
surrender.
back-
We'll surrender that territory.
It's
to you.
hard for humans to say, you just put us through 8 years of criticizing President Obama, and many of it came across as racist type of comments,
And-
to now say, I want my payback. And so it's difficult. We got to do it. We got to be the bigger person, but we're afraid once we become the bigger person again, it's going to go back to the other way.
Well,
So-
and I think to that point as
Not
well.
saying that you do that.
No, but there are people, and I understand, and
Yeah.
I think that one of the underlying fears, whether it be correct or incorrect, and this is, I think, in
In 30 seconds,
30 seconds,
we're going over.
people are on the conservative side.
Sure.
They see a large part of the threat of immigration.
Sure.
Is that they are being courted by Democrats, illegal immigrants, as
And we had
potential
that,
voters.
and we had that conversation. I think you and I have had this, and I'm not sure if we've had this before. And that's why it's so important for shows like us, which we are targeting. In case you don't know, we are targeted at English-speaking Latinx individuals, demographically more of because they are the fastest-growing demographic in America, and especially in Charlotte in the voting bloc. They have the most dispensable income, and they are a very powerful group, and the reason it's those of us who you would, I don't know if you'd be surprised. Many Latinx people are very conservative.
Oh,
They're very conservative,
certainly.
whether it's religiously, whether it's
Christian community is large.
And the only way I can kind of equate that to, I kind of equate it to my grandfather on my mom's side, who was a World War II veteran with his two brothers. It's you learn to work within the system, you play by the rules, your family becomes successful. You don't want the system to change because you've learned to work with it. It is difficult to see change when you've learned, change is hard for everyone. So I understand why it is difficult for some people to see change because it's scary. They're like,
much like we were talking about
Yeah.
in the racial issue of
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
people being,
Yeah.
not that they're intentionally being racist or racially motivated, but it's environmentally.
Sure.
You know,
And so
they've
what,
grown up in
so
a
what we
certain
have to do,
situation.
we have to do a better job as progressives and as Democrats or people who want change. Because even though I'm very progressive, I'm fiscally very, very conservative. We
But we
have
gotta
to,
understand that
Yeah.
changes, even though not everybody likes it. For sure, we're not using the old phones, right?
Sure.
We
Yeah.
upgrade it.
yeah, change
So
happens.
Yeah.
change happens,
Yeah.
and we have to adapt to it.
Well,
We
we've
gotta
so-
just learn and kind of balance it out.
So we've got to do a better job, I think, of messaging when we're talking
There
about
you
change.
go.
So, for an example, if we're talking about Medicare for all, we've got to do a better job of educating people of we've got to talk at the level that they can understand of why it is important for Medicare for all. It saves us money, it saves taxpayers money, makes us for a healthier nation. Doctors want it. It gets rid of
It
the
helps us
insurance
in a
companies,
level.
which really are profiting. It lowers the cost of big pharma. Some of those kind of things, instead of just saying, well, because they're
Oh.
It's
messaging.
socialism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, because
yeah.
that's not a winning
No,
argument.
well,
But
I
anyway,
can
don't know if you wanna
afford.
add
I
before
can
have to
afford
go
my
on to the
own
next.
No,
insurance,
let's
but
go
you
on.
can't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Because
All right.
we're
It's
over
like-
time.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're running over,
Yeah.
and I need to respect everyone's time.
Thank
so,
you.
Thank you everyone for talking about this, and let's talk about. I feel like we can update. NC09 update. We're only going to spend very, very few time on this. Still no solution to the 9th Congressional District elections. Mark, go
yeah,
ahead.
Yeah, let me
Yes.
say something.
Yeah.
Because there is a hearing a week from today.
Yes. Mhm.
The 22nd
Next one.
in Raleigh, and it's a court appearance. So McCready and presumably his attorneys will be there. Same with Harris and his attorneys. And I'm thinking about going, assuming I'm over
Sure.
my cold and I can drive up. But I'm going to go up, and so
Okay.
on the 22nd, I think.
And this is the State Board of Election hearing. Or is this a
no,
court
this,
hearing?
This is a court
This is the
hearing.
court hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So- and
and
that's-
so there's no board at the
Sure.
moment. And,
That's right.
And we don't want to go into all of that
Yep.
stuff because it's way too complicated.
Mhm.
But there could be a decision on the 22nd whether or not the writ of mandamus, the demand,
Mhm. To-
whether they have to comply with it and go ahead and certify. So I think that Harris is actually on fairly. Let me just provide a amateur legal opinion,
Mhm.
and this is strictly amateur. Do not do this at home. I think that Harris's legal position is better,
Mhm.
and that because the board was bureaucratic
Yep.
and delayed, they had the opportunity to
Sure.
do it. They didn't do it in time, so the state has failed in many ways. Why should Harris be the one to suffer from that? Basically, that's the way I view it. Now, I have, as we know, I have very strong disagreements with Mark Harris. And I think they should actually just throw them both out and seat me.
Well, and that.
but
Well,
be-
then you and Cano are going to court over that one, you know?
So
picture
anyway,
that-
that's it. We'll know more
Sure.
after the 22nd. So if you can just hold on tight and not
Exactly.
not fret and not set your hair on fire for the next
Well,
7 days, we should know a little bit
And,
more.
and,
on the
and it is.
22nd.
I'm glad you said that, Jeff. And I'm
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you explained it so well,
Yeah.
and I appreciate
Yeah.
you doing that because there's a lot of confusion out there with,
Yeah.
with people who support Mark Harris, who don't like Mark Harris, who don't
Yeah.
like Trump, who
Yeah.
like Dan McCready,
Yeah.
who like you, who like
So-
all the cases.
In case they go and we would have to go and fall for a new election, a new vote.
We don't know anything yet.
We don't
In
know anything
case
yet.
that happens.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities on
How-
that.
it could-
You will not be on the ballot, or you will be.
I would run, yeah.
Okay.
Now,
That's
however,
all I
having
need.
said, my take, and just short and sweet, this issue is going to be decided in the courts.
Yeah, I
It's
think
I
not-
will
so.
also-
I don't think it's going
I
to
think
be
so as well.
I don't think it's going to be
Board of Election.
obviously Board of Elections, that's out the window because
Yeah.
that whole system is in disarray.
It
But I
is.
do believe it's going to be settled by the courts, whether it's the courts seating Mark Harris
Sure.
or the courts saying there's going to be a new election.
And this is what I have been saying. I have not changed what I've said from the very beginning, and I continue to say it. And I'm sure Jane Whitley, who's the chairperson of the Mecklenburg Democratic Party, will try to use this against me, as she has many times in her whatever Laurel and all those
Bless her
people.
heart.
Yeah, bless their hearts.
There's so much negativity to choose from.
Exactly. What I've said is the overzealousness of our North Carolina Democratic Party, who I think knew about this. Dan McCready himself sent an email out that said this has been going on since 2010.
Oh, wow.
So we, and I, because I'm a Democrat, we knew about this since 2010, and we didn't lift one finger to do one robocall, one warning, one email, one Facebook posting, one social warning. Watch out for people picking up your absentee ballots who aren't related to you. We didn't do
So
any
no
of that.
wonder Pittenger stayed here for so long.
So, this is what I'm saying is that it is.
This is the
so-
disaster they
this
were
is-
waiting
exactly.
for.
Yeah.
And
This was the
I don't, and that has, and I understand why. I don't really understand, but people in leadership positions, if this had happened in the corporate world, we would have cut the head off of all the
Yeah.
leaders.
Oh, yeah.
We would have fired the CEO. We
Yeah.
got to fire our state party chairman. We got to fire
The stockholders
Yes.
would have
Yes,
revolted.
yes, we've got to fire our county party chair
But
people
everybody
because
covered
they knew.
themselves.
So you can't have it both ways. You can't say bad, fair election, voter fraud, and then say, and we knew this
But
since
we knew about
2010,
it, but-
and then say, oh, but I'm the only one that didn't know. You
Yeah.
can't have it both
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
And rational people, that's why this is it's such a fiasco, because at the end of the day, the people that get hurt and that are being hurt are those of us who live in the 9th Congressional District. We're the only
voters.
We're the only ones that don't have someone sitting at the table in Congress on our behalf. We're the only district. So that leads me to remind everyone, our true congressperson who's representing us is Alma Adams. She represents the majority of Charlotte. If you have issues, I don't know what she can do, but she is our congressperson. Please go to her. I will say that I did run into Mark Harris this last week. He was very respectful. I told him that we had some words and stuff, and I appreciate the fact that he continues to fight for his base. And I am disappointed that in WCNC did issue a report last night that they have not seen Dan McCready in public since he lost the election. He did take his family to Disney World. We have not seen Dan McCready, and no one has seen Dan McCready at any any congressional. We haven't seen him anywhere.
Yeah.
And so someone who is so concerned about democracy, I don't know how you can say that and not even take the time to get out and talk to the Democratic women. We had our 9th Congressional District, and he is the nominee, didn't even attend that. And so that's why there's this hashtag, Where is Dan? And the social media question is, and someone had asked on one of our pages is, I don't understand why WCNC would ask this question. Dan McCready has been replying on social media and Twitter, and maybe he's just frustrated because of what's happened with the board. And this is what I don't think people who support Dan McCready understand. Regardless of what happened with the election, Dan McCready is not and cannot just be appointed to Congress. There's this impression that we're gonna damaged Mark Harris so bad that he can't take office, and then suddenly we're just going to appoint Dan McCready. Dan McCready wants people to get, I don't understand the messaging. He's the only one who has not said, I'm ready to run for another election. He's raising money because he wants people who supporting him
He wants to be seated.
to think he's just going to be seated. You can't, he's got to run again. So regardless of what happens, he's got to run again. And if they run again, if they do a redo, it will be Jeff Scott, Mark Harris, and Dan McCready. If the courts go further and say it's all crazy, we got to redo it all again, then we have a whole new primary, and Dan can't win a primary because he can't win Robeson County, he can't get in the rural area, can't win the Democrats now.
No.
So it is so, to me, it's just so frustrating for all these individuals that are.
So at the end, if there's a re-election, he's still not going to win.
No, he's not. No, but
So-
and that's what it's yes. So we got to say goodbye. So before we say goodbye, constitutional quote of the week is everyone have their
Constitution number
constitutions?
4, amendment number 4.
Who wants to read amendment number 4?
Mr. Special Guest, Mr.
Oh,
Ford.
well, thank you very much.
Yay.
I am honored to be reading the words of the founders. Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And if I could say really quickly,
Sure.
that's really interesting because that is going to come into play. There is a ruling out there that's going to be made. It has already been ruled that it's unconstitutional to require someone to give you their password so that you can get into their private accounts. That is now being extended to facial recognition
Oh, wow.
and fingerprints
Oh.
because they're saying that you can't compel someone because I have a fingerprint on my phone.
Yeah.
So no one can make me open up my phone so that authorities can read my text. So it's going to be
Awesome.
interesting to see where
see
that
how that
where
runs.
Awesome,
develops.
Unless
awesome.
they cut off your finger.
I did, you
And
know,
take it.
there might be some important information in here that would be worthwhile to
All right.
touch.
All right, guys.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We were going to talk briefly about Congressman Steve
Congressman.
King, but we can't. Everyone knows what's going on with that. They censored him yesterday on the congressional floor for
Censured.
As a conservative,
censured.
As a conservative, can I say something? That guy just needs to shut up and get up. I'm sorry.
Well,
He's
I would
spend
not.
his good capital.
I would not disagree with you, but I do respect the fact that he has a right to say whatever he wants to, and the voters will make a
Of the-
decision
of the
whether they want
Yeah.
to keep him.
correct.
Just as our congressperson and the young lady in New York has every right to say what she wants to say, and the voters now, we hope they keep it within boundaries.
Look what happened
but-
with number 45.
Yes, and so I just think we have to be fair to everyone.
A better lesson? Never talk to the New York Times.
Or any media.
All right, we gotta go.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
We'll see
you.
next week.
Bye-bye.